It was a hot night in Russia. Drones visited Krasnodar Krai. Oh, Sio! Oh, what is that?
Happiness.
Sochi suffered the largest attack since the start of the full-scale war. Local residents counted at least 7 explosions in the sky over Adler. About 800 passengers were stranded in airports across Siberia. The UAVs may have hit one of the railway bridges. Russian authorities also reported a strike on an oil depot on Tavrikeskaya Street.
That's a call, and it is actively required. The oil depot is going to blow.
While in Russia, UAVs are attacking strategic targets, in Ukraine, the occupiers continue to terrorize the civilian population. At night, Putin's troops launched a massive strike on Odessa. As a result of the attack, civilian infrastructure, residential buildings, and sites in the UNESCO zone were damaged. One of the enemy's strike locations was the famous Privoz market in the historic city center. But this war is not enough for Putin, and apparently the dictator is preparing for another one. Russia has launched large-scale naval exercises involving more than 150 ships and 15,000 military personnel in the Pacific and Arctic Oceans, as well as in the Baltic and Caspian Seas.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
37 strikes, but supposedly without any losses or destruction. No, this isn't a literary oxymoron, it's the official report on the drone attack in Nevinomysk, Stavropol Krai, Russia, provided by Mayor Mikhail Minenkov. According to the Astra channel, drones attacked the chemical plant Nevinomysky Azot. Russian media clarifies that this facility is a major producer of nitrogen fertilizers and ammonia and is also part of the Eurochem group. There were also complaints about an attack by unidentified drones in the Rostov region on the night of the 25th of July. Eyewitnesses told the SHOT channel that they heard between 5 and 7 explosions in the suburbs of Taganrog. The US State Department has approved a possible sale to the Ukrainian government of air defense equipment and M109 self-propelled howitzers. The total value of the deals is estimated at $330 million. It is reported that for $150 million, Ukraine will be able to purchase about 12.5 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles.
That's roughly the number of vehicles we've lost during the Russian-Ukrainian war. Apparently, they've decided to replenish the ones that were knocked out. They want to deliver new ones. Well, this is actually a pretty good situation for us. We do need them. After all, they're good vehicles. They've been used in various wars and are adapted for modern warfare.
The German defense company Hands-On announced that it has signed a contract worth more than 340 million euros to supply Ukraine with modern radars to strengthen its air defense system. Also, on the night of the 25th of July, there was a global outage in the Starlink satellite internet service. Users around the world reported losing their connection. Among those left without internet were Ukrainian defenders on the front lines. The company acknowledged the issue and Elon Musk personally promised to fix the cause. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced personnel changes in the Ministry of Defense and further steps in the field of security and defense. The head of state spoke about the appointment of new deputy defense ministers of Ukraine and also noted that he continues to hold negotiations regarding the defense of our country. Russian dictator Vladimir Putin named the construction of strategic submarines as a priority in the development of Russia's navy. According to Putin, this task is given top priority because allegedly the submarine forces protect Russia.
I suppose, and this is my subjective opinion, that shifting the conversation to the submarine fleet is meant to distract Russians from the fact that, well, with their military aerospace, or rather air and space fleet, their strategic missiles, strategic ballistic missiles, something is not going right. That's why the conversations about the fleet started.
Ukrainian intelligence officers have received confirmation that the Russians are using chemical weapons on the front lines. This is confirmed by one of the commanders of the Russian army, who discusses preparations for the use of chemical weapons banned by international conventions against the positions of Ukrainian defenders. The Security Service of Ukraine published the radio interception.
It seems the ruble is on a downward slope. After the third round of negotiations in Istanbul, which did not yield much success, the ruble noticeably depreciated on the Moscow exchange.
Russia's problem, like that of any autocracy, is that politics dictates the economy rather than economic feasibility, determining the processes that should take place in the country's economy. That's why they were propping up the ruble there. But because they were holding it up so tightly, I think that was a request from the leadership, specifically from Putin. And as a result, a situation arose where many export-oriented sectors of Russian industry started operating at a loss.
How could that be? So now it turns out that without migrants, Russia won't be able to overcome its labor shortage at all. But at the same time, the Kremlin doesn't really like these very migrants all that much.
We proceeded from the fundamental idea that it's absolutely necessary to update the existing migration legislation regarding state control over foreign citizens.
Now let's go into more detail. The president of the Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs stated that the labor shortage in the Russian Federation exceeds 3 million people. And he called for bringing in migrants, which, by the way, also won't really change the situation much.
The full-scale war that Russia calls the special military operation. What has it led to? First of all, a significant number of people have left the country, especially after the partial mobilization in September. And secondly, because the cost of contracts for the war against Ukraine was constantly inflated. This problem isn't going away. On the contrary, it's only getting worse. They're trying to make up for it with migrants, but migrants create internal pressure.
Meanwhile, the car market has dropped by 40%, as a result of which Gaz, following Russia's largest car manufacturer Avtovaz, will switch employees to a 4-day work week. And no, this isn't for worker productivity like in Europe, but in hopes of cutting costs.
They're already looking to revise salary payments and want to introduce fines. If you do something wrong somewhere, and before they used to turn a blind eye, now they'll reduce your salary, cut your bonus. These attempts to save money also lead to an increase in the number of dissatisfied people in the country. It was already growing, but now the growth and discontent are just accelerating. And this will have consequences sooner or later, the most revolutionary kind.
But that's not all. The collapse of the economy is already being felt by the owners of huge shopping centers.
For this, a national project called Efficient and Competitive Economy has been established, and the president has set a national goal, sustainable and dynamic economic development.
Yeah, right. All about development. For example, the owners of the largest shopping mall, Avia Park, have decided to sell the property. And that's all because the government has finally closed off any possibility for Western brands to return.
One of the problems with the Russian economy, let's put it that way, is that import substitution exists only on paper. So when you say we're going to get rid of Western brands and have our own, it turns out that's only true in theory. In reality, what you actually create is something of a much lower level, significantly lower quality. As a result, those business centers that thought domestic brands would take over are losing out.
But Putin isn't the only one with problems. Lukashenko is begging again. The Minister of Finance of the Republic of Belarus is discussing the possibility of attracting additional funding from Russia.
Right now, Russia really needs to think because it has plenty of its own problems. And now there's Belarus on top of that. Logically speaking, of course, they should have refused Belarus. But as I said, authoritarian regimes are more likely to sacrifice themselves than, or rather not themselves, but the well-being of their citizens, yes. That's more accurate than stop helping their satellites, for the simple reason that they will always be afraid that Belarus, seeing that Russia isn't giving money, will turn to China or to Turkey or even to the European Union.
Meanwhile, Western sanctions have deprived Russia of many oil buyers. But now things have gone even further. Now even raw material suppliers are turning away from them. And such signals mean only one thing: the sanctions are working. And this is already becoming noticeable for the Russian Federation.